Hello everybody. This game that I'm going to show you was played under an influence of a song. I would recommend you take a look and read, in case you haven't, my Substack that came out just today, this Saturday, that discusses the influence that different songs, music in general, has on our playing ability. Most of the time this influence is indirect because, as we know, music affects our moods, and music does have the power to make people happy, as Tarash said, but also to affect and change a person's mood. So this game being played at the Baku Olympiad was peculiar, and the whole Olympiad was peculiar for me because in a funny coincidence, every single day when I would get into the van that would take me to the playing hall, one song inevitably was played on the radio, and that song was Rihanna's "This Is What You Came For." And in fact, I quite liked the song, and it actually helped me really get into a very good mood on the way to the playing hall. And okay, once there I was already in a good mood, and I think this helped me have a really great score at the Olympiad, scoring 7 points out of 10 games and being by far the best player on my team. So without further ado, if you really want to have more details on this thing, again, I would recommend you read my Substack on music and chess. So in the game, I went for e4. My opponent played knight f6. My opponent was a Pakistani player rated around 2100, and he played the Alekhine defense before, but in this game he actually varied from his usual choices. So after e5, knight d5, d4, d6, I went for knight f3, which is the main line against the Alekhine, even though nowadays the c4, knight b6, and now both ed6 and especially f4 are really critical tests for black. But I went for knight f3, which is also a very good choice against the Alekhine, and here he actually deviated. Previously he had played only d takes e5, whereas in this game he went for the bishop g4 move. So I wasn't really surprised, because when I was preparing I also checked what I would play in case he played this. So I continued confidently. So bishop e2, e6, short castle, bishop e7, h3, bishop h5, c4, knight b6, and now e takes d6. This was my idea. Traditionally the main move has been knight c3, but after e takes d6, c takes d6, I had played knight bd2 before, a very interesting move that you can check, but there were already games in the database from me with this move, so I thought I should deviate, and I went for the move knight c3. And after short castle, I now played Smyslov's move rook e1, the usual moves being bishop e3 or b3. And Smyslov's move is actually quite interesting. It's sort of a waiting move, and I remember when I was looking at different ideas against the Alekhine, I checked, I picked up a few of these from Smyslov's game. So I would, if you're interested, you can just take a look at Smyslov's games against the Alekhine, and you will see this move rook e1. The game in question was the game Smyslov-Schmidt, played in 1980. In that game, black played the move b3, a6, and after b3 played knight c6, bishop e3, d5, c5, bishop f3, bishop f3, knight c8, and so forth. Take a look at the game, because you will see later the importance of this rook being on the e file, because after a further exchange of on e3, after f takes e3, the rook supports the e4 push. So you can take a look at this very interesting idea. Luckily for me, my opponent wasn't that well versed in the details of the Alekhine and played the most natural move knight c6, which is a well-known inaccuracy because it allows for the move d5. The point is that now, after the exchange on d5, white manages to capture on d5 with a piece, and that sets back black with a very bad structure, weak and isolated pawn and backward pawn on d6. So the point being that e d5, knight d5, and if knight d5, queen d5 makes sure that white obtains a better structure. And in case of bishop takes f3, bishop takes f3, knight c4, unfortunately for black this is not possible, because after knight takes e7, knight takes e7, bishop b7, rook b8, bishop f3, white has a tremendous position, pair of bishops, superior structure, and taking on b2 is not actually working, because after queen c2 the knight is lost. So this is the tactical justification of the move d5. So black took on f3, and after bishop f3 played knight e5, but after now d takes e6, f takes e6, instead of a backward and isolated pawn on d6, black has a pawn pair on e6, d6, which is equally weak, because advancing would weaken either the square next to that pawn or would lead to a creation of an isolated pawn in the center. In addition to this, white also has the pair of bishops. So in this position the threat is knight f3, and I had to decide what to do. Taking on b7 was an alternative to what I played. I played bishop g4, and after rook b8, bishop e4, knight c4, b3, knight b6, bishop e3 also looked very good during the game. I played bishop g4, immediately targeting the pawn on e6, and after rook f6 I played simply b3, solidifying the pawn on c4. And now again we see the main problem with the Alekhine defense, and that is that the knight on b6 is really a bad piece. When white manages to defend properly the pawn on c4, it effectively kills off any hope that the knight may have of joining the center by, let's say, going back to d5 or maybe capturing on c4. So the knight really has hard time getting back into the game. We already spent some time, knight f6, knight d5, knight b6 to get to b6, but from b6 still needs to spend more time to get back into the game. So black took on g4, queen takes g4. I allowed black to get the bishop pair back, but I still kept my structural advantage and attack against these pawns on e6 and d6. So rook g6, and now I committed a small inaccuracy. The question is where to put the queen, or e4 or e2. I went for e2, whereas putting the queen on e4 was better, because it would stop the move d5. Now d5 was black's best choice. I wasn't too concerned with it, because after d5, knight d5, knight d5, cd5, queen d5, I thought that this is a stable advantage for me, but in fact black has one weakness on e6, which he can defend relatively easily, and as we know from chess strategy, one weakness is usually not enough, so this would have made it more problematic for me to play for a win. So putting the queen on e4 was therefore better. Okay, he missed the chance. He played queen d7. I played bishop b2. I was also considering bishop a3, which looked tempting. What I did not like after bishop a3 was d5, bishop e7, queen e7, knight d5, knight d5, cd5, and now queen g5. Attacking g2 and going after the d5 pawn, and we have something similar to what we just saw, g3, queen d5, this time only without light pieces. So again, this is hard. It's a sad position for black, but possibly holdable, as it is only one weakness on e6. So I went bishop b2, he went rook f8, rook ad1, and now bishop h4. So black is trying to create some sort of a counterplay against the f2 pawn, rook f1, safely defending the pawn, and he went bishop f6. And here I got kind of excited, because I thought there was the bishop left the defense of the d pawn, so I have all sorts of tricks based on c5, knight b5, maybe hitting d6, hitting a7, maybe knight e4, hitting again d6 and the bishop on f6. But after calculating for a while, I started to get upset that none of these moves actually worked. So just to illustrate a few of them, let's say knight e4, this is the best option of those mentioned. But after bishop b2, my first intention was to go rook d6. But now after queen f7, queen b2, black has the very nice move queen f3. And all of a sudden, white loses. Yeah, there is a threat of mate on g2, and if something like, let's say, knight g3, there is a very nice move rook g3. Yeah, again, there is a threat of mate, and fg3, queen f1, and black is a piece up. That knight on b6 survived all the massacre on the other side of the board. So after bishop b2, I would have to take queen b2, and after d5, cd5, knight d5, we have something similar to the positions we were looking at. Very nice for black, for white, pleasant advantage, but black has chances to defend. So after calculating, for example, even let's say c5, knight c8 now, yeah, and after cd6, bishop takes c3, bishop takes c3, and now queen c6. Again, problematic, yeah, threatening mate and threatening the bishop on c6. So all sorts of tricks in the position. So getting upset, I just decided to make a solidifying move, okay, stable move, just increasing the pressure, rook d3, and turned out to be actually a decent choice, yeah, defending the knight in advance, maybe allowing for some doubling on the d file. Bishop e5. So black now keeps an eye on the pawn on d6, bishop a3, increasing the attack, and rook f4. So black is trying somehow to put his pieces in an aggressive way to create maybe some threats on the king side, but king side is actually pretty well protected, especially with the rook on the third rank. So I went knight e4, centralizing the knight, even though rook fd1 was an alternative. Queen c6, attacking the knight, and the knight cannot move because there would be a mate on g2, but this was part of my plan to go f3 and strengthen that knight on e4. And now an interesting thing happened. While my opponent was thinking, I actually saw the combination that happened in the game. And the combination is actually quite surprising. As I noted in my Substack in the comment introducing the video, it somehow reminded me of some of Alekhin's combinations, which use the whole board to create threats. And this is what very nicely and I think unexpectedly happened in this game, and this is the reason why I'm showing it to you. So he went d5, getting rid of the backward pawn on d6, c takes d5, e takes d5, knight f2, attacking the bishop. And this is now the moment that I was hoping for, bishop d4, which is only natural, pinning the knight and putting the bishop on an active square. If the bishop moved elsewhere, for example, bishop d6, after exchange on d6, queen d2, white has, again, a very good position, putting pressure on that isolated pawn on d5, but this was still better than the game. But after bishop d4, now comes the unexpected combination. Rook takes d4, rook takes d4, and now it was important to see the continuation, and that was queen e5. And now at first sight you wouldn't expect that this is winning suddenly for white. Yes, the queen attacks the rook. Yes, the rook appears to be kind of short of squares. It cannot go to d2 because queen f4 is a double attack. Queen f8 is threatened mate, and the queen picks up the rook. Yeah, but after rook h4, then what does white do? And here comes the, let's say, Alekhin's point, yeah, that I made. Rook c1. So you see the threats are all over the board. There was queen f4, threatening d2, but also threatening f8. Now the rook is getting involved in the game via the c file, whereas ideas like queen b8 and going after that king, let's say queen f8 and so forth, are also possible. So the whole board is used to create threats. And this is what makes it quite nice and I think aesthetically pleasing. So for example, if now queen d7, getting away from the attack, there is queen b8 check, king f7 and rook c7. This is the line I saw. Okay, later the engine suggested that queen f8, king e6, g4 actually leads to a mate. Yeah, something like queen f5. Yeah, but obviously I just saw that I win the queen and I stopped looking further. And again, a nice illustration combining penetration along the c file on the queen side with threats on the king side on the whole board. So the queen cannot move. My opponent went rook e6, but now a simple move queen g3 maintains the double attack. The rook is attacked and the queen is attacked. So surprising combination, short one. Yeah, not too many long lines to see, but I think the beauty of it is in its being unexpected. You see this queen e5, and at first sight it doesn't look like it's so great, but then when you start connecting the dots, that queen f4, hitting f8, hitting d2, rook c1, threatening penetration on the c file, now queen g3, threatening the queen and threatening the rook on h4, everything kind of connects very nicely, and white wins. So it was a very, very pleasing combination. So okay, now white wins a piece and the game is basically over. I'll just show the remaining moves. My opponent didn't resign immediately. He played on, but that wasn't, really necessary. But okay, sometimes you have an excuse for playing a piece down or rook down or whatever down in team matches, trying to kind of keep the match going. So he played rook c4, bc4, knight c4, bishop b2, threatening mate, and the bishop cannot be taken because the queen is still on c6, queen d7, bishop d4, central position for the bishop, blockading the pawn, h6, knight d3, threatening knight c5, a fork, rook e7, rook e1, simplest is always to go for exchanges, rook f7, knight d5, further exchanges, knight e5, queen e5, b6, check on e8, more exchanges, king h7, take on d7, rook d7, f4, and just there's really no hope. White even has a majority on the king side. The king is coming, extra piece. It's easy. King g6, g4, king f7, rook c1, g6, rook c6, introducing rook f6 ideas, and my opponent finally resigned. So kind of a feel-good game. Again, will stress, aided by that very nice and catchy song by Rihanna, and well, perhaps some sort of proof that listening to good music can lift our mood and well, help us play better. But please take a look at my article in my Substack, where I discuss also some other points and some other influences that music can have on the player, and also some examples how music has helped me in my career. Not too often though, just some rare occasions. So this will conclude this week's video. I hope you liked it, you enjoyed it. Well, if you did, please subscribe. Check the Substack as I mentioned. I think it's an interesting topic that perhaps deserves a better study, and maybe even more information from other players, how they feel about this topic. So thanks for watching again, and I'll see you soon again. Take care.